Hey, wonderful person. How's your day going? Could you use a mindfulness moment? Could you use some tokens of how to apply mindfulness in your right now practice, your right now day? Could you use a healthy distraction, some storytelling? If you answered yes to any of those questions, I got you. Take a deep breath in and breathe it out. Take a deep breath in and breathe it out. Repeat after me. I enjoy creating my own narrative. Okay. Now, I can't take credit for those words. They're actually coming from, I'm going to give you this person's social media handle, That Broke Black Girl. But I can offer you some tokens of how you can apply that idea in your right now, your day, your actual real life. Token number 1. Remember that your beliefs, your habits create your reality. Token number 2, remember that your reality creates your narrative. And token number 3, create wisely. My name is Maya D. I'm a storyteller by trade, and I do so through dance, but I also do it through writing. I am a true believer in storytelling as a vehicle for change, as a motivator, as a thing that teaches values. So I like to use these quotes that I find, these mindfulness moments, these words of wisdom as inspiration to share my own lived experiences with the intention of giving you a healthy distraction, motivating, inspiration, sharing so that we all grow healthier and better. So if you have a moment, if you have some time, go ahead and get cozy for this story or continue listening and doing whatever you're doing. Remember, only you know what's best for you. So here's our story. This is New Age storytelling. So I have my laptop in front of me, but it's going to be okay. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to relax. You're going to listen. And we'll be better on the other side. Falling. The term falling from grace has been used many times and will be used many more. I think it's a reference to falling out of God's grace. I imagine that the fall, you're then detached from peace, protection, abundance, and love. I would imagine this fall to be overwhelming to the fallen because they remember what it means to be in grace. I've seen this fall played out many times on movies when that heavenly being falls from grace and must exit heaven. The crazy thing is, a person that is addicted to drugs once used this heavenly comparison to describe their first high. They told me that they reached heaven and the wearing off was their descent back to earth. They now knew heaven, and that remembering was too much for them to handle at times. So every subsequent episode was their failed attempt to get back to that place. Now, I have not experienced this kind of high, but I will accept this comparison as their truth and maybe the truth of others. In this acceptance of a possible truth, I wonder how many times I've actually witnessed this descent. I wonder if the user, when they're descending, what it actually looks like to a bystander. Beliefs and habits inform your reality. My shirt was damp because my heart was still accepting the truth my eyes witnessed. For the past weeks, maybe months, the same scenario repeated in the neighborhood around my job. This time, I was crouched down at the bus stop, shirt wet from the tears tying his shoes. He sat slumped, eerily slowly falling to his side. This was his descent back to earth. My uncle was once again high in public and slowly descending to the ground. I'd taken up the habit of propping him up, tidying him up any kind of way that I could because that's all that I could do. He was far too gone to remember me, and I cried because I remembered parts of him that had never returned. His smile no longer contained its pearly white teeth. And honestly, I couldn't remember the sound of his voice. I only remembered what it felt like. I cried because I longed for the jokes, the hugs, but these parts of him had never returned. And like so many other times, I tied his shoes, I propped him up, and I continued my walk to work. My reality was informed by those around me. They say addiction is an illness, and some of us are predisposed to it. My biological family makeup sets me squarely in a position to take on this addictive reality. You learn to navigate the world a little differently when those around you are suffering from this kind of illness and would do anything to ease their pain. My world, my reality felt a little less safe and very undependable. Your reality creates your narrative. My reality was one of fear and of shame. I remember the day in my 4th grade elementary school class where we were taught about marijuana for the first time and all of the epiphanies that would come after that lesson. Not sure why this memory stands out, but I remember walking along a sidewalk and stepping over a pipe and thinking, top paper. Top paper is what you roll marijuana in. And remembering or it becoming clear that that's what the adults were smoking. It was one of the things that the adults were smoking. It was one of the things that the adults around me were doing. With this newfound piece of clarity, my eyes were open to all of the other things that the adults around me were doing. And because of that, as a child, I feared falling victim to addiction. I felt ashamed of my family members. And because of that, I began to want something different. I wanted something different, and luckily, my mom is who she is. Luckily, my mom is the beautiful person that she is. They say ignorance is bliss, and this blissful gift allowed my mother a certain level of freedom. I'm not quite sure how she didn't see what was going on around her and how it only minimally had an effect on her, but that reality, her reality, intrigued me. My elementary school experience and education included enough information about drugs and drug abuse that I couldn't live in the same reality that my mother lived in, but I was intrigued about how she lived in that reality and how she was able to find a certain level of freedom. This meant that I witnessed 2 narratives and taught me that I am free to choose and to create the way that I want to live. I choose this day, and I choose every day to be round rather than to squarely fit into the narrative of my mother's siblings and some of my other family members. Create wisely. No squares around here. I've decided to be well-rounded. Inspired by the ignorance or innocence of my mom, I was determined to create another narrative for an older me and those following me. I felt school and media portrayed one side of addiction. Either they were the victim or they were the villain. As I questioned how both experiences could live in one body, I opened up to the idea that there was more. So in my very superficial research, I learned that there were all kinds of addictions. And based on your society, your community, these addictions were associated with different types of negative connotations. And that all was it varied based on where you were. A changing factor for me was actually when I began to reframe how I viewed addiction. When I viewed addiction as a mental illness that involves the pleasure portion of the brain, I understood that a person could be addicted to just about anything. And I've actually included a link to one of the articles that I read in the description below. This information allowed me to focus on the denotation rather than the connotation. Dealing with the denotation encouraged me to have conversations about the topic because I no longer felt shame. Without the shame, I was able to have transparent conversations with my mother, with family members, and even my children. Identifying, acknowledging addiction became the focus of the conversation. With my children, I told them if they ever find themselves extremely focused on one thing, so much so that they found themselves being dishonest, neglecting their basic needs, and the needs of those around them, then this was a good time to reflect and reevaluate. We also talked about how this could be the truth for others around us and how we could show care for them, creating healthy boundaries and not being spirit damagers. Everyone has their own personal path to their heaven that is full of twists, turns, and falls. So to be careful of not intentionally spirit damaging someone else's spirit on your path to your own heaven. They say addiction is an illness, and some of us are predisposed to it. My biological family makeup sets me squarely in a position to take on that narrative. I choose this day and every other day to be round enough that I don't fit into that narrative, well-rounded enough that I am well-informed about addictions that run in my family, well-rounded enough to be compassionate and empathetic to those who are suffering, well-rounded enough to create another narrative for those coming after me. In the words of that broke Black girl, I enjoy creating my own narrative. This means that I remember that my beliefs and my habits create my narrative. This means that I remember that my reality creates my narrative. This means that I remember to create my narrative and my reality wisely. I hope you enjoyed this storytelling moment, this moment of mindfulness, those wise words. I hope that they offered you whatever you needed in this time. You can feel free to drop it in the comments below. Take care. Remember to like, subscribe, and submit. To like, subscribe, and to comment. And I'll see you again next week. Take care.